morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on which part of the world you've joined in from. Hi, my name's Ranjan, and I'll be your host this evening for an event which we call Ensuring Success for Students with SEND, the post-pandemic scenario. We'll take a look at how, as the pandemic opens up, as we come back from the pandemic, as we move away from lockdown, what impact it will have in society with our teachers, with our students, and particularly students and pupils with SEND or special needs. But more of that with the specialists. I'll introduce the special panelists who we have with us this evening. But before we do that, I'll start off with a poem that's actually been sent across to us by a 15-year-old boy. Just to introduce him, I'm a 15-year-old boy living in Greater London. I wrote my poem from my experience of being bullied in school. You may hate me, but I hope that through my words, you understand the effect that the words of my bully had on me. You may even know somebody like me in your world. I wrote this poem for all the misfits, the outcasts who struggle to fit in with the crowd, for those who are different and are persecuted for it, those who wish that they could have fit in but cannot, those that crave human companionship but only receive hostility. To them, I say, be brave and stand strong. Don't let the bullies win. Don't let them break you. Never let them see you weak. They may knock you down, but you can get up and rebuild stronger. Last of all, I know I will never meet you, and you never meet me, but I believe in every single one of you. The victims will grow stronger and the cruel will change. I'm proud of you all, so keep going. And the poem that's been sent across by this 15-year-old boy uh, goes uh, as follows. The dank concrete corner harbours a creature hunched, alone in the drizzle, eating a packed lunch. Footsteps, a great shadow cast, the seizing of the wind's cold icy blast. The money, the voice cold hard tone. The creature looks up, outnumbered, alone. It lashes out against its masters. It's been weeks and days. It summons up his courage and says, no, the dreaded reply. The creature has made a mistake, and he knows why. Skin and knuckle he sees. Its nose drips blood. It roars aggressively. I'm sorry, but the attacks still thud. In the class it's shunned, told to shut up. So it says, so it stays quiet, but still they won't stop. Relentless onslaught, the insults a scream. They destroy it, break it, and shatter its dreams. For the dank concrete corner harbors a creature hunt, alone in the drizzle, eating a packed lunch. It will stay like that, for it, day by day, for alas, for it, there is no true escape. For with its insults and punches, he will forever be strafed. For in the reject's unforgiving life, there is no escape. On that note, we will start today's session. I will invite our specialists, our special panelists who've joined us this evening, and I'll make an attempt to introduce everyone who are there on the screen today, starting off with Michael Purchase. Michael Purchase, a former special ed teacher of 19 years with a good record of change leadership. Currently an education consultant specializing in SEND and inclusion. He works with single schools and with multi-school projects to identify common themes and challenges with regard to vulnerable, disadvantaged pupils, provide support and training across schools to find solutions and agree on improvement actions. Successful school improvement partner, coach, and mentor. Teacher, trainer with a well-regarded university. That's Michael Purchase for you. Up next, we have Caroline Hill. Caroline is a freelance SEN consultant, has been a SENCO and deputy head. Her journey in the field of education started as a teaching assistant and slowly worked her way towards achieving the grades and experience needed to move up to become the assistant head and Senko. She believes in inclusion and building relationships, which are key to lifelong learning. Three principles that's always guided her teaching and consultancy are creating hope, building resilience, and belonging. Caroline Hill. Up next, Rob Harding. Rob has been a secondary teacher for over 20 years in London, trained Senko with lots of experience in pastoral care. He's been the designated safeguarding lead for over 15 years in various inner London schools. And finally, last but not the least, Sripriya. Sripriya is an innovative thinker with a proven talent for developing support solutions for children and adults with special needs. She's the founder, director of British Education Support Services, BESS, people behind the show this evening. Sripriya has a master's degree in autism and has been working in the field of SEN for over 25 years. She has been the SENCO in various institutions over the last decade. She's a qualified specialist teacher and assessor, having experience in assessing individuals from more than 30 nationalities. She has immense experience in assessing for dyslexia, access arrangement, and identification of SEN in international students. She is well experienced in supporting families and helping them access the service and support they need. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our panel for this evening. Everyone, very warm welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Excellent. So today, of course, we've got roughly an hour with us, and we'll be touching on different topics. We kicked off, of course, with quite a poignant poem written by a young lad called Jishu. And as we kind of move through the entire pandemic, and as we kind of move back from the pandemic, people are returning to some level of normalcy. Children are going back to school, teachers are going back to face-to-face teaching, and of course, parents are resuming work without having to worry about homeschooling. So my question to each of you panelists, and I'll come to each one of you one by one. So how important do you think it's important for the staff and the students to reconnect after everything that's happened? Michael, over to you first.
Thank you, Sir and Jan. Hello, everyone. Connection. Connection and relationships are integral to everything that we do. And it's all about leadership and culture in schools. We learn best when we feel safe and connected with others. Because learning is a social activity, and sometimes we don't kind of appreciate that until lockdown happens and we're not, in a school anymore, in a community anymore. And I'd say this is the same for children and adults, the importance of connection and relationships. The best schools, the most inclusive schools, have already put connection and relationships at the heart of what they do. And those schools that are doing it now will have done it forever, and they'll probably do it for a long, long time. The schools that probably haven't done it for a while, and on return, hopefully I'm wrong, but are probably still not getting it right now and may not get it right in the future. It's about those leaders in those schools, ensuring and believing that connection and relationships is critical to what we do, rather than thinking about the curriculum, attainment and scores on the doors, key stage SAT results and examinations. I think what I will say from my experience is that children and adults will always do their best in a culture where things are done with them rather than to them. And I think most of us can identify, how it feels when things are done with us, and also how it doesn't feel so nice when things are done to us. Doing with culture, there are high expectations and a high degree of support. And this is what we expect of you as a student, a teacher. But we are going to help you do that, get there and reach those expectations by putting in lots of support. And that can take many, many forms. Teachers, for example, the expectation might be really, really clear and very, very strong on them that they need to create inclusive classrooms for all children. so all children can learn and make progress. And those teachers can be helped by, the leaders might say, well, we can provide you with a coach, and we can give you some access to online learning modules, for example. For children, you are going to engage positively in learning. That's our high expectation of you. And we're going to make sure your teachers are highly skilled in personalized learning, which is the support aspect. So connecting with children is a key element of providing support. And there's lots and lots of ways that we can do that. Get to know you. We are going to get to know you as teachers. We are going to get to know you pupils. We're going to find out what your interests are. We're going to find out what motivates you. We're going to provide you with a go-to person, a champion in your school that's going to provide you with lots of help and support. We might arrange for someone to check in with you every morning, check with you at lunchtime, check out with you at the end of the day, to make sure that you're prepared for the following day. Did anything go badly today that we can correct and sort out, so you don't have a bad day tomorrow, so things will go well for you. And I think the main thing that teachers can provide support for young people with SEND is, we're going to make sure that we tailor all the tasks, all the activities to your needs, aspirations, and interests. I've talked a lot there about doing with and doing to cultures. If you want to look at more, there's a whole raft of stuff that's been done on it. It's called the social discipline window. If you Google that, social discipline window, lots and lots of things will come out, and it's all about having high expectations and high support. Restorative practice is something that many of you will have heard and indeed used. That the social discipline window is at the heart of that. It's not being soft; it's quite harsh in a way because of the high expectations, albeit with the high support provided as well. So, to me, is vital. Leaders will set the tone, the climate for the school. What they say and what they do on a day-to-day basis. And the best inclusive schools where our children with SEND can thrive, those schools put connection and relationship building at the very heart of what they do.
Thank you, Michael. And well, having been a school governor myself in the past, and this is something I hadn't actually told the panel earlier on. So I have actually been quite close to quite a few of these things. But I have promised I won't dive into the details myself because that's going to kind of drift us off, and we're going to be short on time. So, Rob, moving to you, from a safeguarding perspective, how do you think this has changed, and how do you think this might be affecting the students as well as the staff?
Well, I think initially I'll just touch on or follow up from what Michael said. I obviously agree with what Michael said, but more specific things can be done in school. It's mainly about communication and the clarity of information that you give the children and give the staff. Things like language is so powerful. So you don't say to the children, oh, you've missed so much, you've got so much learning. You don't put added pressure and anxiety on the children. You change the language to, you don't say catch up, you say add on, or you say consolidate, or you say learn more new things. You don't use the language of panic, of worry. You might have worry as a teacher or a deputy head like I do, but you don't put that on the children. So that's going to add mental health concerns, add anxiety to young people. So the assemblies, the way you talk, the conversations you have in the corridor, have to try and be as normal and as positive as possible. Because, as you just alluded to, there are now more serious and worrying safeguarding concerns due to the pandemic, due to coming back and trying to come back from the pandemic. The obvious ones, which unfortunately we've seen in the news, is the county lines activities where children are exploited sexually and for criminal reasons. Also, the increase of domestic violence in family homes over the lockdown period. And all these things, what I would say to all professionals in this field is just to be mindful of these things. Be mindful of how gentle you have to be and how careful you have to approach the children and the families. The parents are going to be more snappier when you speak to them on the phone. Students are going to have less patience with you. And I think as long as you have that understanding, then you can approach it in a professional way still, and just have the patience we're all recovering, we're all going back and all trying to reconnect at once. We've all coming from different experiences over the last, well, most recently in London was the 2.5 months of lockdown. And it's just about giving that real support, of people in the school they already know and trust.
Okay, and Caroline, I mean, obviously, because of the pandemic, a lot of children have actually missed out on targeted therapy or intervention during this period. So, how do you think this might have affected them? And are there any proactive measures being taken to, well, almost catch up with that post-pandemic?
Again, I don't think it's about catching up. I think it's about honing in on what these young people have experienced during the pandemic. I think everything that we've done post-pandemic needs to wait for a while we understand young people and what they've been through. We've already heard from Rob that so much more is coming out with risk and safeguarding. We've already heard about the importance that these young people are listened to. And with everybody worrying so much about, oh, they've missed this and oh, they've missed that, actually, we need to find out where they are right now. Because without that information, we cannot build a future. We need to now understand our young people. For me, what I have seen is incredible resilience. They have had to deal with something so immense, and they are just told by adults, we're just going to be doing this. You're now going to learn online. You're now going to do this, and it's all going to be fine. If that was us when we were younger, would we have coped as well as our young people? I know I wouldn't. I know I would need somebody to talk to. I know that I would be nervous about going back into school as somebody who is classed as neurotypical. So when you talk about young people who have difficulties in social interaction, when they have difficulties outside of what they see as their normal routine, we need to seriously think about their needs. Unfortunately, we have experienced over the years that senior leaders can sometimes worry a lot about the attainment and where young people are making academic progress, but we have to be aware of their well-being, of their mental health, and of those basic Maslow needs that are always that fundamental starting point. This is an opportunity for schools to have a look and observe the young people, because they need something different to what they did pre-pandemic. There may be children out there who are not on the SEN register who have actually lost the skills of interaction, have lost the skills to sit quietly, have lost the skills to eat at regular times or interact with each other and know how to play. We need to actually observe, and I think SENCOs and SEND teams have a brilliant opportunity to observe. Look at unstructured times, look in the classroom. What can you see that wasn't there before? Can you identify anything that perhaps teachers and senior leaders need to consider putting into a development plan because you've seen it over and over again? We have an opportunity here to get it right for SEN. And I think the best time is now.
Thank you, Caroline, and Sripriya, coming to you finally. What is your feeling about people going back, particularly around their daily routines and how they've been doing things for the last, well, almost 12 months now? How is all this going to affect people?
From a parental perspective or from a child's perspective, if I put that hat on, it's a huge task. Me being a professional, I was scared when I had to go back to work. I was not physically well enough to go back to work. And I still remember the day I was supposed to go back, that butterfly in my tummy. I was worried. I was anxious. It was me. I've been in this field. I'm a professional. I should be perfect. Then I started feeling hungry at odd times. Okay. And I just wanted to have a little bit of a nap in the afternoon because I was I developed that comfort zone over the lockdown, but I couldn't access those things. And it did make me a bit snappy. I was a bit moody. I didn't feel like I was like, God, I can't be bothered. That's me as a neurotypical successful adult. And I'm expecting a child to behave absolutely perfectly, be on top of their performance from 8:15 till 4 o'clock, be able to straight away start learning, producing the answers, remember all the behavioral rules. I was very surprised to see that I was observing somebody during the online lesson. And just before a week before they were supposed to go back, this is a key stage 1 class I'm talking about, and they were reminded of behavioral expectations, how they are supposed to walk in the school when they're going back, how they're going to behave when they're going to go back. If they're caught not following those rules, they will be having some reflection time, which in my ear it sounded like detention. Because for a key stage 1 student, reflection time for not being for talking out of turn, uh, and going to a different classroom to have a reflection time, or missing a play time, having a reflection time, 5 stages of reflection time. So for me, that was not a welcoming attitude. And the child I was with at that time has got is dyslexic and had hearing issues. So the child straight away said that, oh, so I'll be missing out lots of listening times. So even before going back to school, the child was anxious about getting those reflection times, which were definitely not a positive feeling. And also I recently came across uh, some students from very affluent background, like you. And as we know that we often consider domestic violence or the safeguarding issues to be present only within certain strata of the society, but that is not true. Even those kids who are coming from a very affluent family, if you look deep into it, they might be having their safeguarding issues. And I have been dealing with some of the effects of those increased anxiety and all those things in relation to kids coming from a very affluent background. And so they're anxious, they are depressed, they are stressed because they came back from pandemic, they had lockdown lessons, straight away back to exams, boom, 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 because the center assessed grades. And there was no time for those kids to self-regulate or develop that have their emotional regulation. We forgot that they had been in their pajamas, sitting in their bedroom, attending online lessons, while probably something was going on in the background in their home, which we are not aware of. Sometimes parents are high achievers and they haven't been able to spend time. And while I was working as an international student, not with international students, many a times I came across kids whose parents were like really high flying. So they generally used to meet with their parents once in a while in a country during their holidays. Safeguarding issue for me, because they didn't have that, and that's their normal life, so we don't consider those things. But the child had anxiety, was showing lots of self-harm, and so we had lots of concerns with the child. So imagine this child probably being stuck in the house on his or her own. We don't know, we officially know they have got parents somewhere, or those kids or those students who are international students here and couldn't manage to stay in touch with their family for the whole 1 year, and they were stuck in their halls of residence. For me, where my families are based in India, every day was the worry. So imagine so many students, they might be having so many worries going through their mind, not meeting their grandparents who probably were their primary carers, parents being frustrated with maybe their job, they have been made redundant. Maybe, we don't know, maybe the child is a carer. So the child who would be in school and will be seeing it as a respite was having to deal with some serious issues at home. I recently came across a family where mom was bipolar and was substance user, and people didn't know that they had a younger sister who was autistic. So somehow that information got missed. So we knew the child was a carer, but nobody knew there was a younger sister who was severely autistic. We knew a younger sister was in picture. We didn't know about the diagnosis because somehow the information got mixed. So imagine this child having only in year 7, having to take care of mom who's bipolar, substance abuser, looking after a severely autistic young sibling, okay, coming back to school. Probably that's he was looking forward to coming back to school. And I come back to school, you're bombarding me with all the, oh, you have to catch up, you have to do this, boom, 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 boom. And imagine that wave. A child who has had medical needs, missed school for many years, going and had no support from school whatsoever for with the learning. Going back to school and all of a sudden being flooded with all the expectations. So we have to be very mindful about what's going on behind the scenes and talk, build up the relationship with the parents, ask them. I personally feel as a school, the parent your interaction with the parents should be much more now, because they can give you a different view of a child. Listen to the parents, create an opportunity to bring parents in, or creating an online forum for parents to talk so that you can share and be part of the child's life, because the child is everybody's responsibility. And I think that's why the connection is very important for us to know.
Absolutely, Sripriya. So one of the things which I mentioned actually in my last question to Caroline, and you just picked it up as well, just catch up. So there's this kind of new buzzword out there around catch up, and people are saying, or the government officials are saying, and parents and students are saying as well, concerns around shorter holidays, longer school days, having to kind of, gobble up a lot of stuff in a very short period of time because somehow someone somewhere feels that whatever is in the curriculum needs to fit into the curriculum, and the children kind of do need to make sure that they've actually covered the whole curriculum. So, what kind of implication do you think this will have on children, especially children with SEN and related stuff? I'll throw this question out open to all of you. Whoever wants to answer can jump in and answer this one.
Can I just
Michael? Yeah.
Can I just sort of I mean, in terms of catch up, I mean, I'm just echoing what Rob said earlier on around if we in schools or telling pupils that they're behind and they've got to catch up. I suppose I'm just thinking about the impact on children that we're talking about at the moment, who already probably feel pretty rubbish about their learning at school and the progress they're making. So for us to put even more pressure on them, it's a recipe, as Rob said, for anxiety and demotivation. I just think that schools who are going down that route are taking the wrong one. And as you probably already gathered, my suggested focus of schools is on connection and re-establishing relationships. And I think it's better for schools to ask children and young people what they've learned away from school. Remember, a lot of children with SEND have thoroughly enjoyed lockdown. They've loved not being at school. They've flourished because they've been freed from school environments that aren't aren't suited to their needs. So, some children might have stripped a car engine, or they've learned to build a wall, or lots of fantastic things like that. And I think it's down to us teachers and educators to find out what they have learned, because a lot of them will have learned something, maybe not part of the formal curriculum, but I think it's important to listen to the young people themselves.
I would. Sorry, Caroline. Yeah, I would agree with Michael. It's too late. You can't catch up. They will never catch up. So we shouldn't use that term. We're not going to catch up. And it is, in my eyes, it's an opportunity. As Caroline mentioned earlier, this is an opportunity now for us to do something different. The best schools I've witnessed over the last few weeks have done enrichment. They've abandoned lessons. And I've got one of my schools I used to work at. The head teacher was teaching pottery. And he had a group of kids surrounding him while he was on the pottery wheel. But these are the year 10s that need to catch up with their English and maths. No, they don't. They need to reconnect.
Absolutely.
And Caroline, we have to say something.
Yeah, sorry. I want to get in. That's the problem. Sorry. One size does not fit all. We know this. We all know this. As professionals, we know this. And we have to somehow get this out wider, because there are so many young people suffering. And I hear things like, oh, it's such a small minority of the school. It is still part of the school. It is still an important part of the school. And there isn't one young person in any school that isn't entitled to feel like they belong in society. There isn't one child out there who doesn't deserve the best education for them, wherever they are and whatever their needs are. We have to prioritise and personalise and tailor curriculums to meet the needs of our young people. Over the years, we talk about, it goes secularly for me. For the last 2 or 3 decades, we go in circles. All of a sudden, it's academics, academics, academics. Then it stops and it's, oh, actually, no, it's life skills and being able to survive in society. And then the next cycle is, oh, independence. Let these young people be independent. Now, let's be realistic. Take all of those 3. You make a whole person. So we're not just talking academics, we're talking their spiritual, their mental health, their physical well-being, and their academic ability to learn. We have a responsibility as teachers and educators to take time, because it does take time, to personalise and tailor curriculums for those young people who can't access the average mainstream school.
Agreed. And kind of on that question, and I completely agree with Rob and Michael and Caroline yourselves that, catch-up's probably the wrong term being banded around here, because that's kind of creating a connotation of pressure, a connotation of tension on people who are already pretty tensed up around going back to school now, having spent about the last 6 months at home. So kind of from the perspective of making things better for these individuals, what kind of measures do you think are being put in place in terms of making this transition as smooth as possible? And Michael, I'll go to you first in terms of getting an understanding, especially from a senior leadership's perspective. What's their role in ensuring that transition happens smoothly? And the dreaded question, or rather the dreaded comment there, Michael, you're on mute.
There had to be somebody, and it was me. Yeah, without risking repeating myself, and I've talked about the social window and being in the doing with quadrant, so where senior leaders have very high expectations of teachers and also give them lots of support to meet those expectations. But in terms of transition, as a leader should have very high expectations of teachers too. Consider each learner's needs, almost forensically, to find out what each learner needs, ensuring that there's appropriate support in place for those young people in terms of routines, visual plans, visual timetables, personalized support plans. Really, really important that those youngsters get the support. And I think also an acknowledgement that some children and young people will need more support than others. And I think it was Caroline that mentioned, children coming back. We might discover something else about those young people. Maybe they've had some form of trauma or something that they need extra support, whereas they didn't before lockdown. So I think it's been really focused on those individual needs. And I suppose the final bit is that teachers are aware of of sensory needs of young people. Young people that have been at home for a long time, in hopefully a calm environment. I mean, for some it's been a chaotic environment, but for many it's a relatively calm environment. Going back to a busy school environment, and young people feeling overwhelmed. There's too much going on. The sort of sensory issues and difficulties. Meltdowns and all those sort of things. And is that behaviour understood as a result of that, as opposed to behaviour being thought, well, they're just acting out and they need some punitive measures, detentions and things like that. So I think it's leaders must have really, really high expectations of teachers to do those things, but also make sure those teachers have the amount of support to understand what's going on and to develop their practice.
And thank you, Michael. And Rob, from your perspective, again, from a pastoral perspective and a safeguarding perspective, how do you think schools can put in place that smooth and effective transition?
Being aware of local issues. So being aware, I work in the London Borough, and I know the issues within my London Borough that I work in currently, and which are sexual and criminal exploitation. And there's been a huge increase in that in my area. And DA, or domestic abuse, or domestic violence, it's sometimes called. And so making sure that you tell staff about the local issues that have happened since lockdown, and they can, and then more importantly, give them strategies of how to identify the low mood or the change in behaviour that the children may present, and to pick up on it. We've mentioned the word mental health a few times. That obviously is another one to look out for. Ensuring that children are aware of what to do when they are feeling low mood, or they are having issues, or they are finding it difficult. And that's what I would I have told my pastoral teams and my leaders in the pastoral care. And finally, I'd make them aware, remind them of local authority responsibilities in regards to early help. So early help assessments is a really good, with children with additional needs, there's going to be a spike and increase of those. And my London Borough, like every borough in the country, have an early help provision, and they need to be alerted. You need to make sure you're leaning on your colleagues. Safeguarding is a partnership amongst other professionals. It's not a school problem or a home problem, and we've got to make sure that we're accessing or alerting through the early help assessment.
Absolutely. And regarding that, Caroline, what kind of role do you think, the SENCO teams or the SEN teams actually should play, especially the coordination between the SLT and the pastoral teams and the safeguarding teams? What role do you think the SEN team can play here?
I think it's around communication with each area and actually drawing it together and finding those common traits within those young people. There will be people, your safeguarding lead, if you're not the safeguarding lead and the SENCO, I hope you're not, because that's a big job. But it's actually saying to your safeguarding lead, have you got any young people that you're concerned about? Because then the TAs, if they are in classroom or if they're running interventions, they can observe these young people. They can make an extra concerted effort, where if you're lucky enough to have a good team of support, it's that deployment of TAs that has a really massive impact. So if you run key workers in your school, if you have those key workers linking to your safeguarding lead, your SENCO, and then the SENCO linking, if they're not already, but being asked to be invited on to a senior leadership team meeting to discuss some of the vulnerable young people and what things they found out. I think student voice and parental voice is so important at the moment. Parents have phoned me saying, I didn't realise this about my son. Did you know my daughter couldn't do this? And you're like, well, actually, yes, I did know, but thank you that you've observed it. But they've also been able to tell us, did you know that if you give him this while he's working, he can sit for 30 minutes and do the work? Those are the types of things we need. Those are what we call effective strategies, quality first teaching ideas and strategies that work. And then we can say, your mum told me. And again, it's that connection. It's that relationship. They care. This person cares about me. This person thinks I'm worth caring about. How many young people are out there who don't feel cared for? That is where the SEN team can come into their own. They can be that extra big brother, big sister, that mum figure, that auntie figure, that medical person, but they can also bring the other areas of the school together to ensure that there is effective impact across the board.
And Sripriya, again, you also being in a very similar role, what's your view on this?
I agree with all the things they have said, and I think, as Caroline rightly said, that parental voice, student voice, is very important. Ask the students, ask the parents. It's not about just making that phone call to tick the box and entering the data on CPOMs or on SIMS or any of those management system. What are we doing with that data? Is it just a data so that we have ticked all the boxes, or are we actually doing something, following it up? One thing, as a Senko, I would say that everybody thinks that sending an email to the Senko, we have done our job, but they forget that at the end of the day, we end up having 200 emails from various sources, and everybody wants immediate response. Realize the importance of the SEN department. As I always say, that we are good people, we are a good team, but we don't have the magic wand. And also, don't expect the SEN department, all the senior leadership, all the pastoral team work independently. We have spoken to the parent, or the child has said something which we realize that has an impact on the child's overall personality or learning, but we keep the information to ourselves. It's no good, because everybody is working independently. Say safeguarding team knows that, oh, this child has got real issue, doesn't eat properly, so which affects the performance in classroom. Whereas, so the teachers are getting irritated about the child's academic performance. SEN department, the child has been referred to the SEN department because the child is behind his learning. SLT is getting annoyed with the child's behavior. But the fact that all of these can be linked to the fact of nutritional deficiency, we have ignored. So communication between all the departments, seeing the child as a whole, not just seeing the mental health being somebody's issue, academic with somebody else's issue, health being nurse's issue, and rest everything is, if it goes beyond our control, SLT's issue. No, the child is everybody's responsibility. We all have to work together as a team, and communication is the key. Otherwise, we can put everything in place, but if we don't follow it through, if we don't communicate, it's useless. So we have to make sure that this is the opportunity to build up that whole school approach, or we are all in it together. It's not just one department's responsibility.
So Sripriya, we'll come to the whole school approach in a moment. But before that, I will just go into one of the aspects which actually got highlighted in the poem that we recited in the beginning. And one of the great concerns about young and people from a vulnerable background is being targeted and influenced by various aspects of social evils. So do you think that in this kind of post-pandemic scenario, there's a high chance that students with varied needs might actually show an increase in challenging behavior, and that itself may give rise to exclusion? And kind of a follow-on question from that is, what can we do to kind of reduce that risk of exclusion for these children? So I'll go to Michael first on that.
Yeah, I think there is a risk, a likelihood that exclusions will increase. I think there might be a bit of a period. I mean, we came back here in the UK on the 8th of March, didn't we? And I think there probably is a little bit of a time period where schools will be extremely loath to exclude. But I think, the impact of lockdown and the need for transitions and all the sort of things we've been talking about, I think it will start to impact on behaviour. I just mentioned just now, children returning to school after being in a calmer environment at home, being overwhelmed, and then starting to display, negative behaviours. And does the school take time to understand that and work through it with the young person, or do they think, let's just exclude the child for a few days and take it from there? I think the schools that aren't that inclusive, have never been inclusive, will take that approach. I think they will exclude to a higher degree. I'm really, really worried about that. How can we reduce the risk of exclusion? Well, I keep talking about leaders need to create that doing with sort of culture. Really high expectations of everyone in the community, but providing lots of support. But more than that, more specifically, I think it's it is about leadership and culture, and I've always said that. A little while ago, I was involved in heading up a reducing exclusions project across two local authorities in the northwest of England, and we looked at curriculum, we looked at teaching and learning, we looked at CPD, we looked at parental family engagement, we looked at governance. But what we found out was that the schools that had the greatest impact, i.e. they reduced exclusions, were those where leaders had inclusive values and genuinely believed that every pupil in that community belonged there. And I think that's the key difference. In talking about reducing exclusions, I do think it's about the leaders that are in that school. I think they are the ones that are pivotal to reducing that. They set the tone for the whole community. And if teachers feel that their leaders are accepting of exclusion, they will then, move children along up towards senior leaders for that to happen.
I completely agree with you, and especially, as I said, with my kind of past role as a governor in a particular school, I've seen both types of schools. One which is kind of very proactive about being inclusive, and others which are not, and kind of would rather have those students kind of move over to a special school and all that. But I don't want to get into any controversies discussing that. So I will move on to I will move on to Rob and get your views on how do we avoid this risk of exclusion?
Empathy and information. So if the leadership have empathy for the things that I've mentioned earlier about, and everyone's talked about what the families have gone through, that will reduce it. And information, meaning, I think Caroline mentioned surveys and or speaking to student voice or parent voice. So this should have happened already, so it may be too late, but never too late, as I say. But parents and students should have been surveyed about what's happened to find out what is going wrong, and then you'll quite clearly know why John hit Jane, or Peter called Mr. So what, something that you shouldn't have done, and you'll know that because you've obviously done your surveys and you have empathy. That simple.
Mm-hmm. And Caroline, from your perspective, what's your view on how we could reduce this risk of exclusion?
Again, connection, relationship, understanding of the needs within the environment that people find themselves in. So when we talk about autism, the need of those visual prompts that support and help and give them confidence, because they can see and actually acknowledge something concrete that they've been asked to do, that they can refer to. It gives them that independence to think, I can cope here. The things that you can do within the school setting for people who get overwhelmed or people who get really angry really quickly and can't explain why. Do you have a place that you can call a safe haven, a sensory room, or something where young people can have 10 good minutes at least to be able to self-regulate, to find themselves again? And I also think with Senkos, you're never going to please everybody, but you have to stand up for what you believe is right, because there will be senior leaders out there who don't have the understanding or the experience, but it's up to Senkos to say, this is what this young person needs, so that, and with the backup of research and with the backup of other really well experienced people, to say, this is best practice, and young minds say this, or the DFE have said that. We need to actually stand up and say, not for that young person, they cannot manage. Even if that might have a difficult conversation with some of your colleagues, if you know categorically that that is what that young person needs, then as Senkos, that is what we need to be doing.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. And kind of, bringing together the views from kind of all the three of you, especially, it's about identification, it's about empathy, it's about accepting, it's about accommodating, and then of course putting in place that support structure so that it doesn't go in that direction, and kind of standing up to the senior leadership to kind of, in some cases, even educate them on what's right and what's wrong. So with that, we kind of come to the last section of our conversation today. And Sripriya, we'll probably kick off with you, and then we'll come back to you again to summarize the whole session this evening. But, you mentioned the whole school approach. So, what's your view on the whole school approach, and how can kind of a whole school approach be proactive in ensuring the ongoing support for SEN students, especially in a post-pandemic scenario, and maybe potentially even kind of thinking about some of the things that parents have picked up as part of this kind of extended homeschooling session that we've all kind of gone through, learning from the parents and kind of involving the parents in that process as well. Sripriya, over to you.
I think this is a golden opportunity for schools to actually know the child again and review quite a few things, because most of the schools are set in their own way of thinking that this is what we offer. But is it relevant to the child? It's not. So maybe a review of the curriculum, subjects that they're offering might be worth looking into, because we might discover that the child has learned of some skill which is absolutely amazing and probably has got the talent and the ability to pursue that as a career. So are we offering a range of subjects? So as a school, you might actually start exploring into creating a balance between academic and courses like ASDAN, life skills, or vocational training for some of the SEND students, because with all the catch-up going on, everything going on, they're going to collapse, they're going to crumble. They might not, if they have got a supportive family, supportive school, but there's always a worry about you're running a race. It's like being on the hamster wheel. One of my students described, like, I'm running, but I'm never being able to reach where I want to go. I'm putting in so much effort, but I don't see the grades. And these are all high achievers. And talk to the parents. Find out how much effort these students are putting in. I recently assessed a student for specific learning difficulty. And from school, there was no concern. Zero concern about the child. The referral form came back literally blank. And I was like, okay. But when I assessed the child, his needs were significant. When I spoke to the parents and the child, it came out that the student is used to working till 2 o'clock in the morning so that he's on top of his learning. So imagine, so learn about these things. Maybe some of the students are putting in that extra effort to stay afloat, and which is affecting their performance in school, which is affecting their health, which is affecting so many things. Find out, talk to the parents, learn about their study habits, learn about their food habit, learn about what is the life outside school, because that will explain, that will give you a better idea about the child, that what on earth that child is supposed to do, what he is good at, who is or she is. Know the child. And I think it's, as a whole school approach, again, the communication, it's everybody's responsibility. The child is not only parents' responsibility, not only class teachers, form tutors, pastoral team. If they're on the SEN, often if they're on the SEN registry, it's supposed to be SEN department's responsibility. Nobody else is bothered. So everything gets passed on to. If the child has got behavioral issues, it's pastoral team's responsibility. Nobody wants to know. And if the child is one of the naughtiest one in the school, then it's the SLT's responsibility. So it's not about that. We all have to come together, get the information, know the child, and believe me, ask why the child is behaving in certain way. Why? Ask why. What is causing it? Don't just look into the behavior and go straight to the consequence. There's this called antecedent. So we always say ABC of behavior. So, and for the antecedent, we need to talk to the people involved in the child's life. Just ask that why before you jump onto conclusion and give a tag or push them towards the rat race. Find out about the child, and that's, I think, the core about the whole school approach or the child. It's all about the child.
Absolutely. And Rob, I'll go to you next around, the kind of role that safeguarding and the pastoral team can actually play in terms of the whole school approach. So what's your view on that?
Well, as Sripriya said, we're all responsible, but we're also all responsible for safeguarding as well. So, and SEND and safeguarding, unfortunately, are more vulnerable. So the students with SEN, as we know, with their additional communication needs, Usually, they're less likely to understand when they're being abused or they're being exploited, which I've come across, unfortunately. They're more dependent on adults, again, which heightens their vulnerability. And I suppose we've all got to be conscious of our unconscious bias. So we've got to be aware, and that we might build a strong relationship with parents of SEN children, and therefore we've got to be aware of that, and therefore we've still got to be able to notice when there's change or there's a potential risk. And the same with nurses and healthcare professionals; they might have a good relationship with the parents. And it's about what Michael was saying earlier about fostering a culture. So we've got to foster a culture of where a child comes first always, as Shapira said. And if things aren't right and you're not happy, challenge them. We all can challenge them. If you can challenge using your local authority designated officer, LADO, if there's an adult that you're not happy with in school, if the head teacher hasn't dealt with it properly. And also, my final advice would be take action and don't delay. We've got to be quick if there is a problem.
Absolutely. And so moving on to Caroline. So from your perspective, from the SEN department's perspective, how does kind of, the whole school policy's expectations on, behavior and differentiation, how does it all play into the whole school paradigm and the whole school approach?
Yeah, I think everybody needs to understand that language is probably the biggest need within a school environment. And when you talk about language, we're not just talking about social language, we're talking about technical terminology, we're talking about goodness knows how many different opinions that a lot of our young people will not have experienced. So for me, I would be looking at whole school wise about language, about making it a reflective language so that the emphasis goes on the adult, not on the child. So it's almost a type of scripting. I can see that you're not coping very well with this by the faces you're pulling. That's not saying you're acting up, stop misbehaving, sit down and be quiet. You're actually saying, I can see there's something not quite right because you're showing me that things aren't right. What can I do to help? And I think it's that language, that use of reflective language for all staff to use consistently. So whichever classroom you go into, whatever tutor group you go into, everybody's saying the same thing. I can see that you've done an absolutely brilliant job there. Well done. I can see that you're really quite struggling with that. Is there anything I can help you with? Or where do you think you've gone wrong? Or where do your next steps come from? It's that positive language, not the negative language, which leads on to the calmness. As adults, we have children that will send us from 0 to 1,000 in a split second. These children are looking for some sort of power. When you get that feeling inside of you that they have sent you to 1,000, you need to be the adult. You need to take a step back, take a deep breath and say, I'm the adult. He's trying to have power or she's trying to get her way. Give them an option. You can choose whether to do this or you can choose whether to do that. Diffuse, take it away, distract. If we can start to do that across the board, then we'll start to have a more inclusive environment.
Thank you, Caroline. And finally, going to Michael. So, from an SLT's perspective, how can the SLT kind of enable the whole school approach to be most effective, especially in this post-pandemic scenario?
Plus, I've covered it to a degree. I mean, what I would say is that leaders need to create that community where everyone has the highest expectations from children, young people with SEND, ensure they're suitably supported by highly skilled staff who are well supported in their professional development. I think, if we are demanding that teachers do the best for children with SEND, we have to make sure that they are suitably supported by training and so on and so forth. One thing I will say as well is about schools where there's a big emphasis on connection and relationships amongst the staff as well as pupils. There tends to be more collaboration amongst teachers. So groups of teachers will work better together. They will start to have, problem solving sessions and meetings with each other to think, right, okay, we've got this pupil who's exhibiting these behaviors or is facing these challenges in their learning. Schools where there's connection, those teachers will resolve those issues. They will work together and collaborate. Teachers are very good. I think sometimes they don't get the chance and the opportunity to work together and come up with positive solutions. And I suppose, and the final thing I'd like to say is just in terms of, I think it's good for schools to reflect on what worked well during lockdown. Some of the teachers I've been speaking to in the last week were saying that in terms of pedagogy, online learning required more modelling. They needed to model more. Now, we know that a lot of children with SEND need that modelling. They need that extra input. So, why stop doing that now that we're back in school? Why not carry that on? I think Sri Priya has mentioned a lot about parental engagement. I think a lot of the schools I've spoken to, their parental engagement was brilliant during lockdown. They had to work a little bit harder, a little bit smarter, and it was better. So why stop doing those things? And also for young people, online learning, why can't some young people continue to have some online learning? Maybe not 5 days a week, but some, blended learning, because we do know, and I've mentioned it earlier on, and I think a few of us have said it as well, for a lot of young people with SEND, schools ain't the place for them. It's not the environment for. So why can't we give some young people an opportunity to have some of their learning at home? It's just being flexible, isn't it? We need to be flexible in our provision to match their needs.
Absolutely, and as you said, the pandemic probably has had quite a few positives about it as well. And one of those, I would say, probably is the closeness that parents have actually had with their kids. The amount of time they've been able to spend with their kids probably has been unprecedented. So some of them, for some of them, of course, it's probably been over the top. But in most cases, it's been a really nice experience for them to be able to spend that time with family and kids and so on. But having said that, we've been through probably one of the worst pandemics in the century, and it's been a really tough time for all of us. So if we take into account the kids, the pupils, and especially people from an SEN background, it's been probably the most challenging periods, one of the most challenging periods in their lives. And as they move back to school, as life returns to normal, it will bring with itself, its own challenges and its own kind of problems. And obviously the forum today has tried to kind of highlight some of these issues, highlight some of these challenges, how the senior leadership team, how safeguarding and pastoral teams, how the SEN teams can work together to make this transition into the new normal kind of a lot more normal for these kids out there. I think that's what this conversation has been all about. I mean, before we kind of wind up this evening, Sri Priya, as one of the director founders of BESS, would you like to say a couple of words and conclude the evening, please?
Yes, thank you so much. I hope this session was quite eye-opening for me as well. And also another thing I want to say, like Michael said, some of the best practices that we can carry on. One thing we often from the SEN department, we say to the teachers, pre-learning is important. Make sure the notes are available. So now that you have established a system of online learning, why can we not upload the notes onto the drive so the students can access it from home? Just make it available. You have done it, so there's nothing to hide. If you're delivering a PowerPoint presentation, just upload it on the student's drive so that they can access it from home. So as a parent, it was very helpful for me to know what they're learning in Key Stage 1 or Key Stage 2, because being involved with secondary, I had really no clue about primary, what they're learning and how they are being taught, which explained lots of things which we struggle with in secondary. But the best part of it was because I had access to the resources on the drive, I can look through it in my spare time and make sure that my child has learned it in an appropriate manner. So which ensure the progress. So the pre-learning, pre-teaching, making notes accessible for the students before they go to the lesson. We have already established the system. Just carry on doing it. There's no harm in carrying on the good things that we have learned through the pandemic. Just make sure you do it. It's not a hard work. We are preparing lessons. We are doing the presentations or whatever worksheets or anything. Upload it. So the parents can see, the child can see, and it just makes life much more easier and transparent for everybody. And that's one thing I really wanted to say. And before winding up, I would like to say thanks to everybody who has attended the sessions and the speakers. And also at BEST, we will be doing, we work with schools. We do deliver lots of training, and where there will be more webinars coming up. There's one coming up shortly. I'll announce the date soon, which is on use of technology and SEND. And then there will be one on doing therapies with your day-to-day, in your day-to-day life. So those sort of webinars will be there. So keep following us, and hopefully this session was useful. And if there's anything we can answer you have queries, feel free to send us a mail. And just a message for those who have registered for this event, there will be a handout which will be sent out to you, which kind of sums up all the things that we have discussed, so that you can share it. So, and please be with us.
And Sripriya, just a quick plug from TwoTech. They're one of our supporting partners for this event. So TwoTech Media, they actually have virtual reality tools that they've developed especially for SEN teaching. So just wanted to quickly plug that in. I have nothing to do with them, but just been told about that. And yeah, so Sripriya, sorry, back to you. Sorry to kind of barge in there.
While you're talking about TwoTech, I'll just give you a brief background, because many schools and many parents will find it quite useful, because I'm working as a SEN advisor for them. It is a online teaching platform they have created, which is kind of bringing in all the features of 3D games, whiteboard, sharing screen, and teachers can add their own resources. So it's kind of an online teaching portal specially designed for SEND kids. So there have been, it's a budding project venture, and they have on board specialist advisors who are young people with special needs on board, who review the games, review the portal, and gives us feedback about the usability. And so that's an amazing thing they're doing. So BEST has kindly ventured with them. So we will be sharing more information about TwoTech. They're in the beta version now, so we are looking into finalizing. And if you would like to be part of the trial, just drop us a message, and we will. I'll share it with the TwoTech group, and they can then sort it out the trial for you also. And it's nice. It's everything in one go.
So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Sripriya. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, everyone, for joining in this evening. We hope to see you soon in our series of webinars. This is Sharanjan signing off from BEST. We hope to see you soon. Have a great evening and have a great week ahead. Thank you.